So persuasive speech writing and delivery is IA2, and you may do this at different times of the year. It does depend on your school and how they structure your pieces of assessment. You may be doing it in term 2, you may be doing it in term 1, or perhaps even term 3. And so a key part of persuasive writing that hopefully you will have heard of before is logos, pathos, and ethos. So logos is about logic, pathos is emotion, and ethos is character, the sort of image that the person has. So let's have a look at these in more depth. We've got an example related to geese. So this is an example persuasive speech about how dangerous geese are and some points that you could include to meet that idea of logos. Geese kill 5 people per financial year, while crocs kill only 1.5. So here we are comparing, we're arguing that geese are more dangerous than crocodiles, and we're using statistics. So logos, logic, is about statistics and facts to support your point, and just general logic as well. It doesn't always have to be statistics and facts. You can also just have that logical progression of ideas, that connection between ideas can also meet that idea of logos. 45% of Australians have been attacked by a goose in their lifetime, and the RSPCA has ranked geese higher on the 2022 deadliest animal list than crocodiles. All those sort of factual ideas that are going to support that argument. Now, pathos is about emotion. Not only would death by goose be excruciatingly painful, but the humiliation of such a demise would also obliterate one's memory. So the word choice here, excruciatingly painful, humiliation, demise, obliterate, death, all words that convey emotion. You're not just saying it would be bad, which is not a very impactful emotional way of describing the situation. Sleek white body, honed for speed and agility, powerful yellow legs encrusted with razor-sharp talons. So you can see how we're using descriptive kind of words, emotive words that make the audience see something in their mind, feel something, those sorts of things. That is what pathos is. Ethos. This is about character or image. So you can think about ethics in this case because it's a little bit about it's about credibility and trustworthiness. So it's about the trustworthiness of the speaker. In this case, you'll be delivering the speech, so you want to be shown to be trustworthy for your audience. We cannot ignore the treachery of the goose any longer. Could you allow for more innocent lives to be lost due to ignorance? So, logos is going to typically be facts and statistics. Pathos is going to be emotive words, potentially stories as well that bring about emotion. And ethos, you can cite different sources to show that you are credible and trustworthy. You can also tell stories as well that are going to resonate with the audience, show your personal connection to the topic. Keep in mind that for a persuasive speech, oftentimes you won't actually be an expert on the topic, but you typically will be taking on some kind of persona. So you will be acting as though you are someone in particular in some situation. you might be delivering some kind of speech at the United Nations or something like that. So based on that, you can use that situation and think about how you can make yourself trustworthy while you're pretending to be that person. Okay, so step one when it comes to the structure. So we've got bringing in the first taste of the problem and connecting with the audience. So catching people off guard and getting their interest. It's going to act as a bit of a teaser trailer for the rest of your piece. And there are a few main approaches. You've got a quote, a piece of data, a story. So you can be quoting someone who said something significant on the topic, and that immediately can potentially give you some credibility because maybe you're quoting someone reliable or well known. And then you've got the idea of data can also really hit the audience if you're talking about the environment and how many animals have suffered because of something, or how many trees have been knocked over as a result of deforestation or something. Those sorts of statistics can really make an impact and shock the audience. So that's where data can be helpful. And a story as well, really getting the audience in, painting a picture in their head, making them feel a connection to someone who you could be telling the story of. And usually it's going to be 3 to 4 sentences for your hook. And the first sentence is where it's most important. It needs to be really hard hitting. And that's because you want to make that impact so the audience wants to keep reading or keep listening. Step 2 is the introduction. So the hook is pretty much part of the introduction. And so this is about the rest of the introduction now. You've got your personal introduction where you are going to introduce your persona and your context. So if you are someone who is a person of some sort who is delivering a speech at the United Nations, you would outline your role and you would mention where you are. So the fact that you are at that United Nations convention or something, and that would make it really clear for the audience what the context is for your speech and why you are the relevant person to be speaking about the topic. That can also establish that ethos, that credibility, because you show what your connection is, why you're there. And then, of course, you need your thesis statement. What is it that you are arguing? What are you going to be proving? So, not only what you're going to be arguing, but also how you're going to argue it. And that is typically in the form of signposting or previewing, where you outline those 3 key ideas that you'll use to form your body paragraphs. Make sure you're picking a side. So it shouldn't be a matter of just sitting on the fence, outlining the good and bad of different opinions and things like that. You should really strongly be on one side of a contentious kind of argument and outlining why your side is the correct one. So step 3 is the body points. Topic sentences or signposting. In your later points, you would use your connective words or phrases. So what is the problem posed in your point? Why should we care? Ethos, pathos, and logos. and then reiterating your stance from the introduction. So there's a bit of overlap here. So you can call it previewing, or you can call it signposting in the introduction, where you just outline very broadly your points. And then here you've got topic sentences. So this you need for every genre of writing. You use it in essay writing, in public audience writing, and it's the same idea for persuasive writing. The only exception is probably your creative writing style. So you need to introduce what it is you're talking about, show why we care. That can be done with statistics and facts to showcase how urgent the issue is, how bad it is, how it affects the audience. You can be using anecdotes from people who have had experiences that are relevant. You can use various just examples of things that resonate with the audience, and all of those sorts of things are going to show the audience why they should be invested in what you're saying and follow what you want them to do, the action that you're ultimately going to ask them to take at the end of your speech. Ethos, pathos, and logos all come into this. And then, of course, you are needing to link back to your overarching argument very clearly in every paragraph. So think about what your overarching point is, and each of your 3 body paragraphs need to directly relate to that. They should be holding it up. They're the supporters that back up that overarching statement, and it should be a clear link throughout the whole speech to that thesis. The light at the end of the tunnel. So your call to action. Now, this is about showing the audience that it's a really pressing issue, it's urgent, something needs to be done, but you also want to show that there's some hope, that it can actually be solved, and that you have the solution. If you suggest that the issue is so bad that nothing can be done and it's just all doom and gloom, then what value would you have brought by delivering your speech aside from worrying people? You are delivering the speech because you want to bring about change, so there should actually be a solution to what you are outlining. And break your audience into groups, give each group a task suited to them, and reiterate your stance. We can stand aside, this must stop, we must take a stand, what they should actually be doing. They need to be able to walk away knowing exactly what the problem is, exactly why it's bad, why things need to be done now, and why they need to be involved in those actions, and how they can be involved in those actions. You need to give them a direction to go in so they're not lost thinking that they are powerless. So persuasive speaking is a really distinct style. So if you started listening to a TED Talk without seeing the visuals, then you would probably be able to identify the type of presentation. So persuasive techniques are what we use to appeal to the human mind. So let's have a look at some of these techniques. Imagery or figurative language. It's all about painting a picture of a scene or action, and you can be using lots of different figurative language strategies, similes, metaphors, analogies, and the like. Personification, alliteration, repetition, there's lots of different examples. So an example here, excessive logging has created smoldering, charred, lifeless wastelands. home to nothing more than ash. So if an audience can visualize the problem, they're going to be more likely to connect with and agree with the speaker's argument. So in this case, we can see the problem, see how bad it is, how much we want to avoid that happening, and that is adding to the persuasive element. It's making the audience feel like they want to do something to stop this from being the reality. There are lots of examples of figurative language, so make sure you brush up on all of the different examples. And when it comes to imagery, don't just think about what something looks like as well. You've got the idea of sensory imagery, and that encompasses all 5 senses, not only sight, but also touch or feel, hearing, smell, taste. So consider all of those when you're trying to use this strategy in your persuasive writing and your creative writing as well. Hyperbole is another example of figurative language. So this is all just about exaggeration. You're blowing something out of proportion for a purpose, to show how the situation is a really big kind of thing. In this case, an example, rugby league players plod in gangs towards each other to thump, maul, and gouge for a few centimeters of turf. So that is a definite exaggeration, because in a few different ways. So they don't actually maul each other. That is not obviously what we do in sport, in any sport. And they do go further than a few centimeters. So you can see how we're actually exaggerating that by saying that it's a lot smaller than what it is. Some really clear examples that we probably use in everyday language is things like, it's taking forever for me to do my assignment, for example. It's clearly not actually taking you forever, because we don't live forever. So that is a simple example of hyperbole. And using colorful or over-the-top language is going to make that dramatic impact on an audience. And it can be really effective when you don't have much time to work with, because it doesn't take much for you to exaggerate something like this. And be careful with this not to jeopardize your credibility. So you want to have actual key statistics and facts that you're including, that are true and correct and not exaggerated at all. But then also hyperbole can go along with that too. So don't use statistics in that hyperbolic kind of way and then mislead the audience. You want to maintain your truthfulness and therefore your credibility. Rhetorical questions are a key part of persuasive writing, and hopefully you'll be familiar with what they are. So there's typically it's a question that you ask without expecting any kind of answer. So how much longer will it take for us to see the truth? How many more people have to get hurt? Sometimes it's just you don't expect an answer. Other times there actually is no clear answer. And another strategy with this is you can ask a question like this and then answer it yourself straight away. That can be a really effective way of getting the audience thinking, but then directing the audience to the sort of thought process that you want them to be taking. So it's going to invite or challenge an audience to agree with the argument, and it's going to encourage them to take a stance on the ideas you're posing. So hopefully you are doing it in such a way that they take your stance on the issue. Repetition. This is about repeating arguments and images, evidence, appeals, emotive language. It can be all sorts of different things that you repeat. So the tragedy is this tragic notion beyond the obvious. So this idea of tragedy here is being repeated, and it's going to emphasize key parts of your argument. It helps the reader remember them, and it links sections of the argument together, so you've got a sense of cohesion. Repetition is also a really good one to combine with things like the rule of three. So oftentimes we'll have three different things that we repeat. So perhaps for your call to action, you say, we must, we must, we must. Have three different sentences outlining three things that you are appealing to the audience that they need to do. And that's using that rule of three, because having three things, and then it's using that repetition of that wording as well. And that comes into this idea of triplets, using words in groups of three for emphasis and phonetic appeal. So hunting is evil, cruel, and outdated. Now, there's multiple ways of doing triplets. You can do it like that in one sentence, or you can do it in separate sentences. You've got do it well, do it fast, and do it now. So those two examples are both triplets in a single sentence. As I mentioned, you can have those separate sentences as well with three different ideas. And it presents beliefs as if they are factual truths, and it's allowing readers to understand and connect what is being said. So we see lots of things that come in threes, like traffic lights, the blades on fans, all sorts of things come in threes, and three things together are said to be more memorable and more impactful. That's why triplets are so effective. Okay, so when it comes to speech delivery, this can be something that is a bit daunting for students, which I can definitely relate to. This is probably a lot of students' worst part in terms of what they like least about the persuasive unit, having to stand up in front of people and deliver a speech in an engaging kind of way. So some top tips for nailing the presentation. Let's take a look. Gesture. So you need to be using your hands and your body. There's no reason to not prepare some easy gestures to use in your script, and mark them on your notes if you need to as well, to give you that little prompt, so if you're nervous when you're delivering the speech, you can still remember to do these gestures. So there's lots of different gestures that you can use. If you want to emphasize how big something is, you can be spreading your arms out. So how small something is, you can be doing that kind of pinching motion to show something that's really small between your fingers. You can gesture to the audience to try and bring them into it, make them feel involved. You can count off. So maybe it's not one, but two, and you put your fingers out to show the one and then the two. Maybe you're counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you would be using your fingers to demonstrate that. There's lots of different examples that you can use, and those are just a few. Also, if you do have slides that you are delivering your speech in person rather than doing that recorded option, then gesturing to the slides can be helpful, because ultimately the slides are really meant to complement what you're saying. So being able to integrate something where you are referring to the slides is just an indicator that you are making those slides really relevant and really complementary to your spoken content. Audience. One of the best things that you can do is practice in front of other people. You can grab your parents, your siblings, friends, tutor, even just pets as well, and get used to being in front of people when you're delivering your speech. And it's useful to get feedback if you can as well. Obviously not from your pet, but from those other sources. They can hopefully give you some honest advice on what you do well and what perhaps you can do better. Another option is to record yourself too, and that can be really effective. Peer marking. If going through your entire speech is nerve-wracking, which for many of us it will be, then find a section that you want feedback on and you can present it to a small group. It could be your peers or it could be one of those other sources that I just mentioned, like some members of your family. And if it is your peers, then they will hopefully be familiar with the task and they can give you some targeted feedback. And the pressure would be hopefully a little bit less intense when it comes to delivering the real speech for your assessment. Passive listening. So the best presentations are done by students who know their script well and are confident speaking it. And that can be easier said than done though. So record your presentation and listen to it as you do day-to-day tasks. That can really get it into your head and help you memorize it in an easy kind of way. When we think about the way that we listen to music, and we can listen to it on repeat and then just learn the words really quickly, this can function like that a little bit. So it may not be as catchy as music, so it's going to be a little bit trickier than that, but it can still be really helpful. And it can also be a time saver doing this method as well, because you can do, as we say here, other tasks while listening to the speech. So multitasking. Know not only your scripts, but just the topic and important points that are relevant to what you're delivering. Know where you want to emphasize, where you want to use gestures, that kind of thing, where you want to change your tone to reflect the content that you're covering. So various things are going to be really emotional, maybe really outrageous, things like that, and your tone will change accordingly. So lowering the chance of nervous fidgets and dancing as well is something that just knowing your speech can help with. Recognize your habits and fight to stop them as well. So there's lots of things that we do when we're nervous that we don't even realize we're doing. So learning what those things are for you is a good way of then being able to be conscious of them and address them before your delivery day. And using those strategies we've looked at previously, getting peer marking, getting feedback from family and things like that, they can help you identify those things as well. Tone. Presentations are interesting when you modulate your voice. It shouldn't be monotone, the same tone that is across your entire speech. You want to sound, like I said before, sad, happy, angry, depending on the content. It needs to be targeted to what you're saying at the time. And that can help with making your audience feel the way you actually want them to. So, of course, you're going to be hopefully using that emotive language and all those strategies we've mentioned, but tone is just another way of adding to that to direct the audience to understand your position on what you're saying and how they should feel too. Pause. Never underestimate the value of pause when it comes to persuasion and just general kind of impact. Let the air hang and let the message sink in. When you've said something really impactful, then giving the audience a chance to absorb what that means, the magnitude of it, then that will be a great use of time. And it's really good to use pause after rhetorical questions as well, because the whole idea of a rhetorical question is you're getting your audience to think about something, and you want to give them the opportunity to actually do that without just continuing to speak and distracting them from the point that you just made. And also, pausing is just a good way of centering yourself as well. As we know, we tend to speak faster when we are nervous. So if you are someone who's nervous, then consciously trying to pause is a good thing to do to slow yourself down and get a hold of yourself in your speech. Using the mirror, so practicing in the mirror as well. This can shed some light on your different habits, and it can allow you to practice those strategies you're going to use. You can think about your gestures, and remember, you can actually use your face to gesture as well. You can be screwing up your face to show how awful something might be. You can be wiping tears from your face, or you could be pointing to your eyes to show, maybe you're saying to the audience that you are going to open their eyes to a really important issue, and you can gesture to your eyes to emphasize that point. And also the tone and the content, you want to be seeing what you look like, you want to be refining those strategies. And practicing in the mirror as well can make you aware of what you're doing more. So if you're someone who tends to fidget a lot and pace around a lot, you'll be able to see that in the mirror, and you'll be able to obviously notice that you're moving away from the mirror perhaps, and that will allow you to address that as well. And so anything that feels right, you can then replicate, and anything that feels wrong, you can refine it when you practice in the mirror. And this can also give you some confidence as well. It's can be a little bit awkward to do it in front of the mirror, but it's ultimately just you there. And if you're getting used to doing something that's a little bit strange just in front of yourself, then that's going to prepare you for what it's like to do something in front of an audience of more people. Okay, so some reminders. Take a deep breath, and it'll be over before you know it. Ultimately, you want to just put as much effort as you can into it, and what will be will be. Not everyone, as we've said, is really into the persuasive writing kind of genre or the speech delivery requirement for this piece of assessment, but give it a go and you will be well positioned if you try your best. Faking it till you make it as well. Pretend that you know what you're doing, pretend that you're confident, and that could come across quite well to your audience. You could be quite good at putting across feelings that you don't truly feel, to give yourself that credibility as well. Don't apologize if you mess up. That's just going to draw attention to a mistake that you may have made. It's going to take up time that you don't have to spare. You want to be using your time to get across all of your points and make sure that you're staying underneath the maximum time limit. Oftentimes, the audience is not going to actually recognize that you've made a mistake. You're the one who knows your script and knows that you've gone off track a little bit. So just try to center yourself back where you were before. You can pause, take a moment to collect yourself, and keep going. And that's the thing about pausing. Hopefully you will be doing that anyway as part of your delivery strategy. So if you're pausing because you need to remember where you're up to and recenter yourself after getting off track, then that's not going to seem very abnormal because you would have been doing it anyway. And have a few people in the room that you can look at without feeling uncomfortable and without laughing as well. So it's all very well that you can look at your friends and be comfortable looking at them, but if you're going to burst out into laughter, that is going to be problematic when it comes to your speech delivery. So it's going to be okay. As I said, just trying your best is the main thing for this piece of assessment and for every piece of assessment for all of your subjects.